I'm Elise Hugh.
And I'm Josh Klein, and we're the hosts of Built for Change, a podcast from Accenture.
On Built for Change, we're talking to business leaders from every corner of the world that are harnessing change to reinvent the future of their business.
We're discussing ideas like the importance of ethical AI or how productivity soars when companies truly listen to what their employees value.
These are insights that leaders need to know to stay ahead.
So subscribe to Built for Change wherever you get your podcasts.
Today on CityCast Chicago, what happened on the Yellow Line last week? What's the city's new migrant shelter plan? And what are you thankful for? I'm here with executive producer Simone Alisea to talk about it all. It's Tuesday, November 21st. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. With the holidays upon us, we got a short week, and we definitely wanted to pack in the news before we take a quick break. Every Tuesday, the team gets together to look at some big stories, some local debates, honestly, anything that we feel like Chicago's talking about this week. And definitely right now, Chicago is talking about the Yellow Line train crash. Service on the Yellow Line from Howard to Skokie and Dempster was still suspended Monday after a train crashed into a city snowplow going 30 miles per hour late last week, and nearly 40 people were injured. Investigators were in the city over the weekend. Simone, what happened?
Well, so investigators are still here from the National Transportation Safety Board, but here's what we know so far. It sounds like the Transportation Safety Board called it a design issue. Basically, the train didn't have enough space to brake before hitting the snowplow. And that had to do with sort of standards that were set for an older design of train car and didn't take into account newer, heavier train cars that need more time to brake. That is sort of the long and short, the initial findings, but there are still a lot of questions. Like I said, investigators are still here. There are questions about whether there was residue on the tracks. So you can think about when you're driving and it's wet outside, right? It takes you longer to brake. There are questions about if there were residue on the tracks that made the braking slower. And some, there are also questions about sort of outside transportation experts have asked about an automatic braking system that the NTSB has recommended for all train systems for years and years and years and years. But the CTA doesn't have to comply with the same kind of federal oversight that other train lines do, like Metro and Amtrak do. And so there are questions about that, questions about residue on the tracks, and then also questions about why was there a city plow on the train tracks to begin with? The CTA said it had to do with training. There was training going on for when snow happens, but I think certainly for the people who were on the train, sort of just general questions abound about why, what was going on here and why was braking such an issue, and just I think a really scary experience for everyone who was there.
Yeah, obviously we're through budget season at this point, but I imagine this is something that will be coming up when we think about CTA infrastructure investments. There was a Sun-Times piece that talked to some of the people who were on that train. And as you can imagine, CTA already has some bumpy tracks. There's some moments when the train is going to shift side to side. There are already some moments where, you brake and you start bumping into other people. But for some of the folks who were on that train, they have some of these same questions like, why wasn't something done faster? Why was there equipment on the tracks? And, some people saying, well, I don't have a choice but to ride CTA. And so now I'm sort of having to deal with the kind of residual panic and concern when I'm riding a train. And so, there's still people who are recovering. This is just another thing people are now worried about even more. And I really feel for those people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right to kind of put it in the context of other issues that the CTA has had. It's weird because it's not the same thing, right? Crashes are very rare. It's right. That's not a super common thing. The investigator from the NTSB sort of made a really strong statement over the weekend saying it is still safe to ride the CTA. I would ride the CTA. I would ride it tomorrow. This is overall, the CTA is a really safe train line in that in that sense, in terms of, right, it's unlikely that a crash is going to happen. But that said, when I do think like this tends to shake people a lot. And the CTA has already struggled so much over the past few years between low ridership, between issues around not being able to hire enough operators, and then that leading to issues of reliability and cleanliness.
They just want to be focused on the holiday train right now. Like, where
Right.
can you go see the holiday train? Where can you get your pictures? Where can you ride it? And like you said, I agree. This is rare, and when we don't want to, send panic through riders. But again, I just feel for those people who got hurt.
I'm Elise Hugh.
And I'm Josh Klein, and we're the hosts of Built for Change, a podcast from Accenture.
On Built for Change, we're talking to business leaders from every corner of the world that are harnessing change to reinvent the future of their business.
We're discussing ideas like the importance of ethical AI or how productivity soars when companies truly listen to what their employees value.
These are insights that leaders need to know to stay ahead.
So subscribe to Built for Change wherever you get your podcasts.
Another big story that came down last week was a 60-day migrant shelter limit. Brandon Johnson announced a 60-day limit that says is meant to speed up resettlement efforts for the thousands of asylum seekers living in Chicago. And all new arrivals to a shelter on or after last Friday will receive a 60-day notice upon intake. Simone, I mean, from Wednesday last week when he announced it to Friday when it went in, it feels like it was sort of fast-paced. And I don't know if people really got the details from this, right? We've been hearing so much about last minute about when people are arriving, last minute about where a shelter may pop up, and now we're hearing last minute about the limits on people who are there. I mean, what are some of the details here?
This is a kind of a departure from how Chicago has approached sheltering new arrivals so far. And to be fair, the sheltering of new arrivals has been it's been very kind of patchwork, right? And we have covered on this show, week after week, month after month of, a shelter is popping up in this old building in this neighborhood, and a shelter is popping up in this old building in this neighborhood, and this hotel is going to become a shelter. And this is the first time that the city is saying, okay, there's a limit on how long new arrivals can stay in these shelters, including people who have been here since last year, right? When buses started arriving to Chicago. So there's a lot of dates and numbers here, but basically folks who entered, in 2022 and who have entered sort of up until last Friday will begin to receive 60-day notices, sort of on a rolling basis. So like some people received that notice on Friday. Some people are going to begin receiving 60-day notices in December. And then some more folks will begin receiving those notices in February as we move along. This is accounting for more than 12,000 migrants who are living in about 25 temporary shelters across the city. There has been so much talk about like what resources is the city providing, what housing is the city providing, and it's actually kind of the first time the city has addressed the core issue of, well, how do we get people out of this transitional housing, right? How do we actually get people into permanent housing? I think there's a lot of concern over how effective that's going to be and kind of what will the other elements of the city's support network kind of step up to help meet that need. There are exceptions, like, for example, people aren't supposed to be put out if there's a medical crisis or if there's extreme cold, right?
That's what I was thinking. I was like, announcing a 60-day limit in November, when that means for a lot of people it could be up in January, just seems like, I mean, again, in addition to so many other questions I'm gonna ask, it is even more precarious. Like you're gonna find that, for people who are in those extreme conditions are also facing a sort of unrelenting Chicago January at this point.
Yeah. So extreme cold is supposed to be one of the exceptional extenuating circumstances that would allow someone whose notice is up to be able to stay at a shelter if they don't have permanent housing. I think there are a few things at play here, right? Number one is, again, we have seen, as we've talked about with all those shelters popping up in different neighborhoods, we've seen so much backlash from neighborhood groups for various reasons, right? And just residents of people who are just like, this wasn't communicated to us. We have needs and like what is happening here. So Johnson is dealing with that element. And we talked about the shelter on the far south side in the 21st ward, where there was a deal that was struck, right, that shelter would only be used for a year, right, as a shelter. And that was sort of the first indication and one of the first things that we were seeing in like, okay, we need to, shelter is a temporary thing, right? Shelter is not housing. And I think, too, the other thing that the Johnson administration has kind of come out and said is like, for people who are still coming to Chicago, who are arriving across the border, we want them to know what the expectation is. We want them to know that this is what we can provide for now. We're trying to provide for the people who are already here, essentially kind of like making Chicago maybe less attractive for new arrivals, kind of saying like, this is the limit and this is what you've got. I mean, I would hardly, you're still taking people in. You're still not saying we're not turning anyone away, but, you're putting a limit on something. And so I think Johnson is kind of finally responding to some of those concerns and some of that just kind of sentiment that has been brewing across neighborhoods in the city.
And while the timing may feel out of nowhere for a lot of people, it came right as City Council had approved his budget plan, where there is over $150 million set aside to take care of asylum seekers. But also Governor Pritzker just announced millions more dollars to help Chicago build, a more centralized intake center, a shelter that might have the potential to house up to 2,000 individuals. As people are saying, whoa, but what happens if, the 60 days runs out, and you talk about those potential extenuating circumstances, but it sounds like there is some system of if your time runs out, you can go back to the centralized location, try to get, apply to get more housing. But like we said, we have no idea how that's going to work. And when with so many other parts of this conversation, like, work visas or, temporary work status, that hasn't necessarily been expanded to everyone, there are other people from other South American countries that have come, people from Haiti that have come, people, other places in Central America. And so the timing of getting a work visa, a timing of getting, temporary or even permanent housing for yourself outside of the shelter system, being put up against this rush of 60 days. 60 days from the moment you get to this city, there's just this clock running in the back of your head on top of all these things you're trying to get. It just, it feels like it's going to create more stress and lead to more people getting kind of lost in the shadows.
It is. And that's sort of what advocates are already saying. Like, even with expedited work permits, sort of that process being available for some migrants from Venezuela, as you pointed out, it's not applicable to everybody. But also, even that expedited timeline, like, you could still run into issues, right? Permitting,
Exactly.
like, we're getting like visa, work permits, immigration. It is a time-consuming process. On top of that, you're trying to find permanent housing. You're trying to navigate. Like, it's hard enough.
Maybe your kid is in CPS.
Maybe your kid's in CPS. But I'm just like, it's hard enough for us to find apartments out here. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've been living in this city for 2 years. I am a citizen of this country. I speak the language. Like, I have a job. Like, it's hard enough to find housing out here, not to mention all the barriers that these individuals are facing. And will they be able to find both the job and the housing? Are they going to be able to do that in 60 days? It's certainly not. It's very, very daunting. And so I think we will see in January, after sort of the first round, so to speak, of notices are up, what does the city do then?
I want to have hope that there's going to be, some humanity to when these notices are up, that, people who just can't go anywhere, they're going to still find temporary housing with the city. But yeah, this is not going well.
Well, I think it's so hard and this is what residents have been saying, is Chicago is already strapped for resources. Like, there are already so many people here who needed help. There are already so many people for whom the winter is going to be a very rough time. And you just have even more people on top of that.
For a lot of CityCast listeners, if you're heading out of town for the holiday, you definitely aren't going to be alone. There are near record number of travelers expected at both of Chicago's airports and on the roads. I'm probably going to have to make a couple trips back and forth with my sister and my aunts and my cousins coming into town. But Simone, what are those numbers looking like?
Yeah, so AAA is estimating that 2.8 million people are going to be traveling by car, flights, and public transit in Illinois this week. That is the second highest number on record and way, way, way up from last year. People are back. They're going out, and it's expected to be very, very, very busy.
I think my biggest travel tip for people, even as we're looking at record numbers, is to remember there is still a pesky coronavirus out there in the world.
Yes.
And this is the exact time of the season where things start going up. I have people close to me in my life who unfortunately have recently tested positive for COVID, which is the most unfortunate kind of a reminder that masking, vaccinations, taking precaution, especially when you're in a place, a non-place like an airport, as crammed as possible with people on planes and in terminals. So, take precautions as you must and make sure you respect other people's precautions as well.
I will say the only 2 times I have gotten COVID, both times I got it, I was traveling through O'Hare.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what that says. That's a sample size of 1, but it certainly makes me more careful. My other tip for folks traveling, number 1, just don't take the Kennedy. We've got 2-week closure. We've got ramp closures that are starting. So number 1, if you can avoid the Kennedy, just do that. But number 2, it's not, I don't know if it's a travel tip or just a life tip. Extra socks. Keep extra socks in your glove compartment. I swear, you'll be happier. Wherever you're leaving, you don't know if you sweat through your socks, you can get cold, or I don't know. Well, you get cranberry sauce on them. You're gonna have extra socks in your car that you could change into. Also, make sure you have I'm a big podcaster. I'm gonna be driving out to the suburbs, and I will be listening to podcasts. Maybe you're listening to a bunch of CityCast Chicago episodes in a row. We have a whole playlist for that, actually. We can link to it on our website, chicago.citycast.fm.
And if you're being invited to somebody's house, it's never wrong to bring something, right? Even if you
Yes,
pick up a quick little
never
pie,
wrong.
quick little bottle or something, it's never, no one's ever going to be like, no, they probably will. They'll probably say you didn't have to, or, oh, you didn't need to do this. They mean it
Bring
probably.
ice. Bring
but
ice,
also,
man. You know how you will be the star of the party if you bring some ice. You will be the absolute, just the GOAT of that entire day.
Simone, you got to see your mother, your brother last week. You're going to be with your family out in the burbs. What's something you're thankful for as you're getting ready to sit down and get down? Because I know you, like me, we love a good Thanksgiving plate.
Yeah, we really do. I think every single dish at Thanksgiving will have pork in it, including the mashed potatoes and the rice and beans. So that is something I'm looking forward to for sure. Something I am really thankful for in this holiday season. It has been such a wonderful year of finding community for me. I have just found a really good group of friends, all by it's wild when you go out to places in Chicago and then you meet people, and then
especially if you're out doing the things you like, versus the things you think you're supposed to be doing.
The things you're supposed to be doing. It's weird. I started doing some art and playing board games and getting out and actually developing hobbies, and it's been really lovely to find a really great group of friends and loved ones in this city that I have been living in for the past few years. And I moved here during the pandemic, and it was very, very tough to get out and meet people. And so I have you guys here at CityCast Chicago, but it's been nice to get out of the CityCast Chicago bubble a little bit and get out and get in my neighborhood and meet people.
That's beautiful. And I'm so glad that you have that you've been cultivating that. And it's been cool to hear the stories every time you are talking about something cool you're doing, whether it was at first, it was a lot of rock climbing in the neighborhood, right? The drawing class was really cool. Hearing you play D&D was dope. You've done some picnics with the homies this year. So that's been really cool. Honestly, something really simple that I've been thankful for in the last couple of months is my brother's new dog, Winston.
Yes, right. So cute.
He's like this mini doodle poodle And he's just got the biggest personality. He's very quiet, but he's like very curious, very rambunctious, is a beggar. And because he's a little dog, it's harder. Like, it's more annoying when a big dog is begging. So you're like, but when it's a little dog, it's like, he's like kind of barely there.
He's just a little guy. He's just
exactly.
a little guy.
He's just a little baby. Just wants a little bit of meat. Just wants some of your ramen. Just a little puppy. Just a little pub. He can't be mad at the little pub if he wants some little ramen. But yeah, it was very random how we got him. My mother's boss got the dog, but then it would like quickly realized how, maybe big of a responsibility it was. And was just like, I can't do this anymore. And my mom immediately was just like, Josh would love the dog. And the minute I saw the picture, I was like, yes, how could you say no? And just sort of fits right into the crew. He's got little outfits and everything. And so
he's got a cute little bandana, and the picture that I saw him, very, very just.
So it'll be Winston's first Thanksgiving and my mom's too. No. And everybody's going to be all over the little guy. So yeah. Between family, friends, and the little furry animals in your household, we want to know what you're thankful for. Please hit us up at 773-780-0246. We love reading your text messages, listening to your voicemails, hearing your name, your neighborhood, and the thing that you're thankful for. And as always, Simone, I am thankful for you for making time.
Thanks, Jacoby. Thankful for you as well.
Before I let you go, one last thing. Make sure you visit our website, chicago.citycast.fm. While you're there, you can look at some of our neighborhood guides, catch up on old podcast episodes, and subscribe to the best damn newsletter in the city, Hey Chicago. We're going to be back bright and early tomorrow talking about everybody's drink they love to hate, Malort. Peace.